Hello, my name is Megs Reynolds, and I'm the Executive Director of the Doomer Agriculture Foundation. We are the national voice and champion for mental health in Canadian agriculture. Thank you for joining our Talk It Out series. This month, we're focusing on the different types of support that exist out there, and we're very lucky to have Mona Cooley joining us. She works with us as one of our facilitators, and she is here to share her knowledge. Mona, thanks for jumping on the call.
Thanks, Megs. Glad to be here with you, having a conversation.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and one of the programs that you run?
Yeah, one of the programs I run is Families Helping Families. It is a 10-week course, is what it is. And it is for family members who are needing to have the support in supporting a loved one living with mental illness and or addiction. And lots of times families are lost of what to do. They're feeling frustrated of how to help someone, or maybe there's no conversation going on and they're not sure how to approach it and how to do these things. And that's what is so frustrating. And the loved one is feeling like they just feel like they're being asked a lot of questions and they're not answering and responding, and they just as soon hide in the room as sit down with the family who are interrogating them, and that's how they feel at times. So it's those type of things that are happening in the family, and sometimes the loved one isn't sure what they're feeling or what they're thinking. They're just in within themselves, and they don't know how to express it, and that's what makes it so difficult for this. And that's why the families are not sure how to go about it. And believe me, I know that part of it because of our own lived experience with our daughter. And it was quite a trial and error that we went through in order to get to where we are today.
Yeah, and it's so hard because we don't really know about all that much about mental health and how to have conversations, how to start conversations, especially in the family dynamic. I think sometimes it's easier to notice something in a friend and feel comfortable to have that conversation than when it is your maybe a parent or an in-law or your spouse or one of your children, and then adding the farming dynamic to that, and it can be a very, very challenging situation.
It is so true. And lots of times we do tiptoeing around. And rather than asking questions to say, I'm feeling concerned about how you're frustrated, it seems, and I want to understand this, but they don't know how to approach these things. And we didn't either. So we tiptoed and didn't do these things, yet there's conflict happening, and everybody was blaming one another. And that's part of the piece of it is, you figure you're doing it right and they're doing it wrong, and vice versa. And I think that's what happens through this whole thing. And we need to figure out how to approach these situations. And that's where learning how to use some tools. But what are the tools? It's just like on the farm, we have tools to fix things. But if we don't know how to use those tools, then we can't fix that problem. So it's similar in the sense of we needed tools, and families do too. And it's recognizing that it is a family situation. It isn't just the loved one, it is the family, other family members as well. And everybody has a perspective, but lots of times you need an outsider looking in to see what the perspective is and maybe give them a different perspective of what it can look like and what is maybe happening.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes just having that outsider say something, even if it is something that someone within the family has said, can be received through a different light.
Yeah, it is so true because we'll listen to a stranger or somebody else, but we may not listen to our family members. What do they know? They don't know what I'm going through or anything else like this. But it is giving that perspective. And lots of times what happens is when you have the loved one feeling frustrated, not feeling that they can go to somebody because nobody's listening or trying to understand them. And so they feel like, oh, I'm the problem, so I might as well just not bother and then the family figures, well, you can do this, you can do this. So they go into a fixing mode and they want to fix that person. And the person isn't wanting to be fixed. And so all of this causes the conflict and the upset amongst each of the family members. So it is about how families can stick together, yet work through these, but using some tools that can make it beneficial for all of them to have a win-win, and that relationships are strengthened rather than breaking down. That's what people want. And everybody wants to be together, but how do we do this?
Mhm. And I think it's important to think about too how, one of the things that we say all the time with Do More is you have to find ways to take care of you and prioritize you, which is so hard and feels so selfish, but you can't pour from an empty cup if you're just kind of giving of yourself, especially in that support role. But so how do you learn to support yourself within that dynamic? And I think that's one of the incredible things of this program is that it looks at all of those pieces instead of just
Yes.
traditionally saying, okay, this person within this family dynamic, they're struggling, they need to go talk to someone, but then no one else within that dynamic is being supported in their role or they're part of that process.
Yeah. And the family portion has been the missed piece for years. And like our own situation, Megs, and I've shared this before, when our daughter was diagnosed in 1995, we were fortunate she got the help. And even though we had to take her to the hospital and she wasn't happy with us and everything else, but it was critical that we did that. And it was best for her as well. But the thing is, she did get very good help. And I say that very sincerely. But the family, when I asked and said, well, where's our help? Like, we're not sure how to approach this. And many people know that I'm not the quietest person, but my mouth was shut up for quite a long time because I was nervous to say anything because it was our battle back and forth between her and I. And I was nervous to ask any questions or say anything. And consequently, there's silence, but we're not getting anywhere. And that is what's so hard with this whole thing. And I think the important part is that when we recognize that gap and we learned, and we did it through trial and error, we made a lot of mistakes. But we also learned, and the biggest lesson, if I can give one tip away right off the get-go, is to listen and understand what the person is saying, such as, I understand that you're very frustrated with me not listening to you. Yes, that's right. How do you think I could do better? And once you do that, then the loved one will consider trusting that you will listen to them. And that word trust is huge, because if they don't feel that you're going to listen, you're going to start this fixing mode again, they'll shut right down just as quick. And the biggest piece for the family member is when you're trying some new tools like this listen, understand, is see how your loved one is responding. If all of a sudden they're starting to say something and you're reflecting and they're starting to say more, take that as an opening door that this is a chance that we can keep building on what is working.
Mm.
And it isn't always what we're doing wrong. It's more about figure out what would be better so it works for everyone,
Mhm.
including your loved one and the family, to start those conversations and start the door to open up to have conversations.
How would someone know if they're just kind of watching this and listening and reflecting on their own home life or circumstances? What should they look for? How would they know whether they should be looking for some type of family counseling together or just individual counseling? I mean, I personally feel like if even if I myself have something where I'm wanting to reach out and I'm at a point where I recognize that I need some type of professional help, I think in my mind I then just draw the connection to having that family piece because now I come from a place of understanding how important that is to have the whole picture supported and looked at.
Mhm.
But what are some of the thought processes people could have around that?
I think, and if I understand you right, Megs, in the sense of that how do we start this process, and what are we looking for, and what is it that has me reach out for help, or who is it that I can reach out to help to? And part of it is, if conversations are not happening, they're shut down. Or if a loved one is just, he or she rather go to the bedroom and shut the door and not respond. And that's a sign right there that there is a concern. But knowing how to, and here's what can help open that door, is I'm seeing that you're frustrated and shutting down to have a conversation. I'll listen. Would you be willing to share with me what's going on so that I can be supportive and we have this conversation? And they may not at first, because they're not sure that that's going to happen, that you are really going to listen and understand. And I know of a mom who had that similar situation. And she just gradually said, I'm concerned about our relationship. I'm very concerned about the well-being of you. And whenever she expressed that, and then the daughter came out and gradually just tried to test it to see if the mom was going to listen. And when she did listen, then the daughter opened up a bit more each time. And then all of a sudden she was frustrated. She was dealing with stuff in her own self at school, and different things like that were happening, but she wasn't sure she could express all of those feelings and thoughts, and sometimes didn't know how to express those feelings. And that's where this individual got to the point that, because nothing was working of what she did, and I hear that quite often, I've tried everything and nothing is working. I'm done. I don't know what to do anymore. And those are the words that I've heard so long over the years. And that's where she did reach out for help for herself. And sometimes it is us as a family that need to reach out first. It isn't always the loved one to reach out, because they don't know where to reach to. They can't even talk to the family. They can't anything. So they're in a place of, I'm alone, nobody gets me, all of those things. So with the family, you're seeing these things, reach out. And that's one thing that we do. And I can say, Meg's right here, is I've had family members reach out because they see that we've been through the experiences and we get it, and that they can have that conversation. And we give a complimentary when people phone up to ask and inquire and talk and share. And I always share tips with them, just for them to consider, so that they gain that little bit. They get a tip, and we're not fixing them or anything, but just an idea for them to consider.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we're so quick to focus on who we feel is struggling and who needs help.
Mhm.
And we get stuck on the fact that we need to try to drag them, sometimes kicking and screaming, to get that help, because we can see how important that is. But if that person's not at a place where they can acknowledge and accept, it doesn't matter what we do on the outside. But so often that's where we disengage, instead of then taking that initiative and saying, okay, well, I can't get this person to connect to professional support right now, but I can connect to professional support, and I can learn some of the tools that I can bring into the house or to the family conversation, and maybe through that start to change the narrative.
It is. And it's who is ready to come forward. And that's what's key. The loved ones don't see themselves as the issue. They see the family as the issue. And the thing is, then that's where the family needs to step up and reach out and ask for that help. I've tried this, and nothing is working. And when you get that outside perspective, and I've had it many times, is that I says, well, give me an example of what you're saying. And lots of times it's how they're approaching, they're fixing. They're saying, well, try this, do this, because the family are desperate to help them. And I started out, it was all fixing. and it got me into more trouble and more conflict. So the family needs to recognize it isn't always the loved one that needs to reach out, because the family, and this goes whether the family member needs help, but the whole family needs help. If they want the relationships to work and to shift and to be in a place where we can have these conversations, and sometimes there's difficult conversation to have, and if we don't build that communication base and get that type of thing working, you'll be stuck for a long time, and then relationships break down and the family breaks down.
And it is our, especially with loved ones, it is our initial reaction to fix, right? We want to take away, we want to solve the problem, we want to take away the pain, we want to wave our magic wand and make everything better. And it comes from a place of well intended, but you're right, it can come across just not the right way whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, and ask yourself, everybody should ask themselves, how do you feel when somebody's telling you what to do? Lots of times, I wish they wouldn't bother telling me how to do things, and the thing is, that's the thing. And that's another piece for us as individuals trying to figure out what to do, is ask yourself, what is it that I can do different to what I have been trying? And that was the one thing. Once our daughter, yes, she was admitted to the hospital, diagnosed, but at the same time, I had to figure out, and all of us in the family had to figure out what we had to do different and ask ourselves the questions. And also, when I listened to her and she said I wasn't listening, I said, I thought I was. No, you're telling me what to do. You're not helping me problem solve. I feel like I'm the problem. And that's where the loved one shuts down. And I'll never forget the day that I was doing much better, even though I was still making some mistakes. But I think the part was that the day that she said, Mom, it's so good to see the family working on what they need to work on. And we're walking side by side while I'm working on my stuff. And what is key is, if the loved one does get the help and the family doesn't change how they're approaching situations, that's going to minimize the work that's happening over here with the family and with the loved one. And they're getting the help and the tools, and they're coming home and they're trying them out, but the family are doing the same thing. And so it clashes, and that's where loved ones may say, you know what, this isn't even worth it. Nothing's changing. And so it is about the entire family. And if people can, and I know vulnerability comes up quite a bit, and it takes a lot of courage to say, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can say that, it's nothing wrong with needing help. I'd rather have my family working together, having the relationships work. And when difficult situations happen, we can actually sit down and have a conversation. We may not always agree, but we got those relationships and those families sticking together. And living on the farm, there's lots of challenges that are coming up and frustrations. But if we can't even have the conversation where we can just express what we're feeling and thinking and just leave it there, and somebody not fixing, but have those conversations, it makes a huge difference. And I've said this once before too, is I did talk to a farmer, and when we were at Olds, and I asked him, I said, what's the biggest challenge with farming and or family or whatever the pieces were? He said, the thing is, yeah, I could have my crops rained out, drought, lots of things, machinery breakdown, all of this breaks down. But what hurts me more is our relations when they break down. And that is what can make a difference. We can have a pile of stuff going on over here, but if we have these relationships working, it feels like I'm not alone. I can have discussions. We can figure this out. We can come up with some ideas together to figure out what we can do about it. And if that can be there, even with the challenges, you're going to go ahead a lot further.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such an important point. I, as you were speaking, I was thinking about when my grandpa and my uncle used to ranch, and there was a good 5 years that they didn't speak to each other. They lived like house
Yeah.
side by side on the farm, and my aunt had to be the go-between. Um, and
Yes.
just like how, yeah, how quick we are to find fault in someone else, especially
Yes.
if they're the person that's struggling. And part of that is coming from that place of wanting to fix and wanting to help and wanting to support, but not, we're asking for vulnerability and strength on their side, but
Mhm.
we're not doing it in return by looking and saying, okay, what am I doing that is contributing to this? And what do I need to change to not just better the situation as a whole, but support that person as they're moving forward and that dynamic. And I think about farm transition with all of that, right? One of the things I keep hearing and I've heard across Canada is like, you know, my dad or my stepdad or my mom or whoever, we can't get them to have a conversation and they just shut down. And, there's trauma that they had from their succession and they're
Yes.
bringing it into this. But so rarely is there any part of that conversation that then continues on to say, so I've reached out and started talking to a professional
Mhm.
to learn how I can and change and how I can change how I'm approaching conversations or starting conversations or
Mhm.
what I can do on my end to help move that forward, to help that person get to a place where maybe suddenly they are comfortable and feeling safe to engage.
And that's a big word, Megs, is safe.
Yeah.
It's safe to have those conversations and just I can express what I feel and just dump it. Just dump it. I'm not asking you to tell me what to do or anything. Just dump it. And you sometimes hear some things you don't want to hear for yourselves, but that's an opening to recognize that there's something I need to do different. Because I don't know of a perfect person. Believe me, if there is, they should be standing here, not me. It's we're not perfect and we make mistakes, but the thing is with that focus of that relationships are so important. And just to give you an idea, and many people may not know this, but our 10-week program has been piloted since 2018 by an organization in Airdrie. The, and the thing is, through that, it's been interesting. Here's some scenarios just to share with you. I think this would be helpful for families to know is that lots of times the loved ones maybe do need the help, but the family are getting nowhere. When they heard about that there was a family piece, they considered it, they had conversations with me and thought, okay, I'm willing, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to participate and do this. It was interesting because when that family or family members, it could be a couple that came to a session and they started looking at the tools, practicing the tools, and that's key, is practicing the tools each week. And they had a week to practice or to try them out and test them out. And as time went on, and it sometimes takes 3, 4 weeks before they start to see little changes. But then all of a sudden, the loved one is starting to respond. And then the family got to learn how to approach maybe those difficult situations. This is what I'm observing and seeing, and I'm concerned. Would you be willing to share with me what's going on so that we can get some help? But that takes a process. But what was happening is that loved one really saw the parents making an effort. They saw them go to the sessions every week, saw them trying to make a change and everything else, and that opened up the door for the loved one to say, you know what, I think I can go for help now. And that was the beginning. And then just to flip that over, I'm going to say that an individual did come to a session and but realized not only did they need the family piece because of what was going on in the family, but they realized they needed extra help for themselves to work through some issues that they had that was buried and needed to be pulled out and to be worked on. And so that ripple effect makes a huge difference. Everybody recognizing there's something that they need to deal with. And I had trauma and different things in my life that I kept inside or didn't deal with, but then had learned I had to deal with it. And because otherwise I could not be a help to my daughter. And that was the biggest thing, was if I'm going to have to, I'm wanting to help someone, I've got to be in the right mental health state myself and make sure I'm dealing with mine. And that's bringing back to, you mentioned about taking care of yourself. And that is huge. And so taking care of yourself is really taking a look at yourself, being accountable for your stuff, but also taking time. Take 15 minutes to do something for yourself. I love Starbucks, so hey, I'll go to Starbucks and get a coffee or tea or whatever. And that's my little break. And this is what woke me up, is that the night that we took our daughter to the hospital, and the next day I was told about a lady that I talked to, and I phoned her, and of course I did verbal diarrhea. I was just, everything was pouring out of me, which in some ways is a huge relief that you can release all of those feelings and thoughts and everything to somebody, and they're just listening. But then she said, you need to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I had another session of verbal diarrhea, and I was thinking that was the last thing that I needed to do. But she was right, and she said to me, if you don't, you'll go down with her, and then both of you will need help. And then what? So it woke me up to realize that self-care is so important to this day. And there's days that, you're running, that goes for everybody, got a lot going on. And taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's not to be, and also on your talk, ask, listen, you've got that breathing exercise. Even if you did that little bit of breathing and everything, it's made a huge difference for people. So it's key.
Yeah, there's a reason they say on a plane, put on your own oxygen mask before helping someone else, because we can't, and I think we need to start to be a little honest with ourselves and realize, especially
Yes.
in agriculture, we're not starting from, if you think of like the mental health continuum where it breaks everything down into calories, we're not starting from a place of like a full battery of being in that, resilient place, being in the green. We're usually more half to a quarter battery starting point, right? We're
Yeah.
not doing, I'll say self-maintenance in case anyone out there thinks self-care is too fluffy, but we're not starting fully charged. And if I'm not plugging my cell phone in daily or multiple times a day, it's not going to last very long, right? So we
Nope.
need to start thinking of our mental health the same way, because
Yeah.
it affects not just our relations and our family dynamics, but it affects our physical health as well. And so being vulnerable within ourselves to understand that we need to look at what we're doing and where we're at and be honest with ourselves and figure out what we can do to take care of ourselves, and then what tools can we bring into our own lives, and then move that forward, right? Because we are all contributing to the dynamics that take place within a family.
Yeah, there is the family dynamics, and we have a list. Actually, when I started out in 1995 and working through with families and everything, I came up with a list of about 20 different statements that they came up with. And that is a checklist. And lots of times that's what we give a family to check that list off to see where the challenges are. And then as we go through the session and they learn the tools and things are improving a little bit by a little bit and everything else, we take them back to that checklist, and all of a sudden it's less. Well, that's a good indication that there is progress. And that's the hardest part, is I'm not seeing it right now. No, you're not going to. I'm going to be very blunt. It isn't going to be right now, but it is a process. But if you do practice tools that are somebody shares, or somebody from a lived experience has shared and this has worked and they try it, it'll happen. And it takes time. And that's why I have 10 weeks. I did start out with 6 weeks. We did a 6-week psychoeducation program a way back. And we learned very quickly from that that it wasn't 6 weeks. We needed that 10 weeks. But then there's also peer groups. And I believe that you've talked about peer groups as well. And we've got a self-directed peer group, which is the families that have gone through the 10 weeks. They continue on practicing the tools and they support each other. And so when you're all on the same page, and that's the other part, is when we get the family on the same page, when we're trying to work through these situations, it makes a huge difference as well.
What can people expect with sessions like this or with your program?
What they can expect is that, first of all, there is the, filling out a questionnaire, because we want to understand their situation, and also fill out that family dynamic sheet so that we can see. And then the next thing that we do, once they've completed that, we have a conversation with them, anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, whatever, because they may have questions and we may have needed more clarification and understanding that it's a process. And lots of times we give them a quick little tip just to have them even try something when they do leave that. And then the next thing that we have, the next process is after that, is we have what we call resiliency, adult resiliency program survey. And it's a questionnaire and that they fill out, and then it determines where their strengths are. It's a strength based. That lots of times we're always looking at what we do wrong, but we do have strengths, and we have areas that we don't know that we have the strengths because it's never been developed or even had the chance to be developed. And so we come from a strength based. And once they do that profile, they get that profile. And you talked about colors, green. Well, there's a red where we're not even aware that I've got this strength. And then we go to a yellow. Well, maybe there's something happening there. Then we have a blue, and then we have a green where our strengths are. And they do that before they start the 10-week session. And on the 9th week, they do it again. And then the comparison happens. And that's where you may see even shifts in how that profile looks. And as one individual said, when they looked at their profile, and even a mom, they basically said the same thing. They didn't realize what it was about them that they needed to see within themselves. And this resiliency profile showed them that, because then they saw something that I needed to look back here more than what I was. I was putting all the things had to be on the loved one rather than me. And that was because you're giving them a comparison and a picture of them, because it's them that's answering the thing. So that's one of the things. And then there's tools. We have about 6 tools, and it is, especially around communication. And then we have an exit plan where you set a goal. You've learned all these tools, and we go through and they have a plan when they leave to carry on. And then it's up to them to continue to do that. But they also have a peer support group to go to once they've done that. So they're never left alone. You can always go back and forth to the peer group to remind yourself.
I feel like you would start to notice or a difference or learn things right away. Like you talking about that initial phone call and giving some just starting, like, have you try this kind of thing, that
Yes.
right away there's tools that are being delivered. And then, I mean, ultimately it's no different than working out in a sense, right? Like if we can have those tools, or we can have that gym equipment in our basement, but if we're never using it and we're not consistent with it, then not a lot is going to change.
And that's right. And the thing is, as you said, with exercising, we have to be consistent. We have to practice in order to stay in shape mentally, physically, all of those pieces. But if we don't do it, then we start to slip. And we do notice that slip in us. This is the same as this, is that the tools that you learn, and it not only plays into the family, the workplace is struggling these days. And that transfers into there as well. And I've had people say it should be in schools, it should be in the workplace, and it should, and because it's basic tools. It is not therapy. We're not lecturing, we're not anything. We're listening to you and reflecting back. Oh, what did you mean by you're this frustrated and nothing's working? Tell me more about that. So it's helping them to think. And lots of times by the 6th week, the group is helping each other and we're kind of stepping back, which is kind of neat to see because they realize that others are going through it, but you can help one another. And that vulnerability goes out the window because today, tell me, if there's one person that has a perfect thing going on in their life, please stand up and start speaking because I don't think there is. And it's more complex than ever today. So let's just reach out, get the help. You're not alone. And if anything, we who've been that lived experience, we get it, we understand, and we want to be there for you.
Yeah, and it's not like you said, it's not about um you did this wrong or pointing
Yeah.
blame or doing it's about
Yeah.
okay, like yeah, let's figure this out. Here's tools how to move forward, how to grow.
And two, I think the biggest piece is what we do as well in that first call is validate them what they've done right so far. Because there is some things that they're doing right and picking those out. Guess what? The loved one wants to see that too, because all they hear is the problem.
Yeah.
So we don't validate of what we're doing right. And this is so important today. So these are all the things that happen. And two, when you're in a group of people with similar situations, you're realizing, boy, I'm not alone. And you learn from each other. We learn from lived experience. We're handed challenges. Do any of them us like them? No, we don't. But guess what? We're going to learn more from that than anything else. But let's share with somebody, hey, this is what worked for me, something for you to consider. We're not saying it's going to work for them. We're just saying something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all a little different in what will work or what we'll need, but having people being in that space and sharing, that's what creates that safe place, right? As soon
Oh,
as someone's able to step into that vulnerability, everyone else is like, okay, I can do this. I'm not alone in this. These are my people.
yeah, that's right. And two, I know that, that always thought that it was women. And I'm being honest with you, there's been lots of men on these sessions. And the thing is, it's amazing because it's about the relationships, and that's what's key to the families, men, women alike. And if you can have less of the troubles amongst yourselves in the family, those other challenges are going to be a little easier to handle or manage, and you're not be overwhelmed. And I hear that word a lot. I'm overwhelmed. And it is overwhelming if you're alone and not, you're just dealing with it all inside. Oh God, it's painful. I don't know about you, but I got ulcers in my time, and that was because I hid everything inside of me.
Yeah.
I was not good about what I'm talking about today. I'm a different person. Ask my family. Mind you, I'm still a kid at heart, and they see that not changing much, but that's okay. That's who I am.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we think, not we do, we think we're doing that out of kindness to spare that loved one, right? I'm not gonna have this conversation with this. I think back to when I was farming and we had 3 hard years with weather and commodity prices, and I felt like as a failure as a farmer and as a spouse and a mother, and
Yes.
I wouldn't have that conversation with my husband because I was like, I don't want to put that on him because then he's going to feel like he needed to do a better job where he's thinking the exact same thing in his mind. Neither of us are talking to each other, right?
It is so true. And this is another thing. And I just finished saying this to somebody that was struggling here just over a week or two ago. And thing is, we do read each other.
Mm-hmm.
We know the body language, our facial expression, our tone of voice, how we're responding, how we're doing all these things. These are all things that are read. And when loved ones who are struggling, is when they see the family struggling, there's more guilt put on them. They put on themselves.
Mhm.
It isn't the family necessarily putting that guilt, it's the guilt on themselves. I'm the problem. I'm causing this problem. And the thing is, it's not that at all, but they're reading the pain in your eyes, the concerns you have, and you trying. But if you are trying to change and do something different, they'll recognize that as quick. And that's happened many, many times. And people don't believe that others can read them. And I said, oh yeah, you're read.
Go
And
to
they're
Vegas
reading
then.
you. It's right, exactly. So my family know when what's wrong when I'm quiet. No, I'm quiet. Well, I just like, but yeah, right. So
Yeah.
lots of times we've got to be honest and just say, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm not in the best place right now, and I need to look at this and do this. But we're reading each other, and that's what's helping us sync at the same time if we're not talking about it.
Yeah. Oh,
That's my
100%. Yeah.
blunt words.
This has been incredible. I feel like this episode is like the best place anyone could start, even just for takeaways that they can start incorporating into their day to day. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to put out there to anyone that's gonna come across this video?
I think the only thing is that I, the other tool I talk about, love, listen, understand, validate, that seems to be my big one. But there is the one accountable, commitment and engage, that's ACE. And the thing is, that piece is about us. And that is a spot where you can start even with yourself about how your behaviors are, how your thinking is, and how your feelings are, and how are you putting them out, and are you expressing them. And that commitment is to have that self-development and to get those tools to help you. And I know that's what made a difference for me, is learning that tools, but also engage in honest conversations. And you need some guidance to start that process. Reach out and ask, what's one thing we can start today to engage our family in a conversation so we can have less conflict.
I love that. If anyone is looking for the program that you run, where is it easiest to find it?
Easiest find, I do have my website, www.coolfamilysolutions.com. We're going to be in the midst of revamping it, but you can reach out to that. And also right on there, they can send, there is a questionnaire where they can send a completed questionnaire and send it to us as well. And it reaches me as well if they wanted to have that conversation and do that. And there's also my phone number, which is 403-512-5558. And
Well,
so either way.
thank you, Mona, so much. This was an incredible conversation. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm really glad that we're getting to share this one with everybody that is out there in the universe that might come across it. So thank you again so much for participating today. If anyone is looking to find out more information on mental health in agriculture, please visit our website, which is domore.ag. There's also a full resource page on that site, which will show you support lines broken up by the provinces that are specific to agriculture. We're going to be launching a national peer-to-peer support platform this summer. And if you're looking to support mental health in agriculture, you can also donate through the website. Thank you again.
Thank you.